20 doctors can't save a billionaire. Then the black housekeeper spots what they missed is an emotional and dramatic story of betrayal, racism, resistance, and poetic justice. When billionaire Richard Whitford collapses mysteriously, his arrogant son Daniel and a team of 20 doctors fail to find the cause, dismissing the quiet observations of Mariah, the black housekeeper who sees what others ignore. From the isolation of silence and systemic racism to her desperate courage in speaking out, Mariah's warnings about a deadly peanut allergy are mocked, until a brave nurse supports her, and the truth explodes into public exposure. As Richard awakens, he confronts his son's betrayal, vindicates Mariah, and the world watches Daniel's empire collapse under scandal. Across 10 powerful chapters, filled with courtroom-like tension, cinematic dialogue, and gut-wrenching emotion, the novel unravels abuse of power, the silencing of marginalized voices, and the triumph of truth, leaving Mariah's courage as the heartbeat of poetic justice. The chandeliers glowed like frozen fireworks above the ballroom, scattering light across crystal glasses and sequined gowns. Laughter rolled across the marble floor as the city's elite toasted to themselves, power dressed in tuxedos. At the center of it all stood Richard Whitford, silver hair slicked back, his voice carrying the authority of money. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, raising his glass, "tonight we prove that generosity flows as freely as champagne in this great city." The words cut short. His hand trembled. The glass slipped, shattering. Richard staggered forward, his face drained of color. "Mr. Whitford!" Cries erupted. He collapsed. For one moment, the ballroom froze in disbelief. Then chaos erupted, heels clattering, waiters rushing, shouts filling the air. "Call the doctor!" someone yelled. Security guards swarmed, lifting Richard's limp frame. A team of medics appeared within minutes, pushing through the crowd like soldiers. From the far corner, Mariah Carter, the housekeeper assigned to supervise serving staff, pressed her hands to her apron. Her chest tightened with fear. She had worked in the Whitford estate for 8 years. She had seen the man's temper, his pride, but never his fragility. "Let me help," she whispered to a passing nurse, but the woman brushed her aside. "Your staff, stay clear." The words cut deep, though she expected them. Richard was rushed into a private ambulance stationed outside, not a city ambulance, but one branded with the Whitford crest, gleaming as if even emergencies had to shine with wealth. Inside, the van doctors already waited. Dr. Halverson, head of Whitford's personal medical team, barked orders: "Stabilize him, oxygen monitor, prep the floor." "Yes, doctor," echoed a chorus. Mariah, left standing in the cold, watched as the doors slammed shut. The taillights disappeared into the night. Hours later, in the hospital's private wing, 20 doctors assembled. They wore crisp coats, like armor, speaking in sharp medical jargon. Machines beeped, charts shuffled, egos clashed. "We suspect cardiac arrhythmia. No neurological collapse. Could be poisoning. Unlikely. He's too careful." The debates piled higher than the stacks of equipment surrounding Richard's bed. Mariah, bringing in fresh linens, lingered near the doorway, listening. Her instincts screamed at her. Something was wrong, something simple, but she knew better than to interrupt. Still, she couldn't help herself. "Excuse me," she murmured, clutching the linens. "Did anyone check if it's Dr. Halvorsen?" Cut her off without looking out now. "This is no place for housekeeping." Her lips pressed tight. She nodded, retreating. Richard stirred, groaning weakly. His eyes fluttered open for a second, searching the room filled with strangers in white coats. "Help me," he whispered. "We're doing everything possible, sir," Dr. Halverson assured. But the words rang hollow, echoing with more confidence than truth. Mariah passed by the doorway once more, pausing only long enough to hear Richard's faint plea in that moment. She thought, if he dies, it won't be because help wasn't here. It will be because help refused to listen. The private hospital wing smelled faintly of antiseptic and pride, a place where money bought silence, and credentials carried more weight than compassion. 20 doctors circled Richard Whitford's bed like priests at an altar. Their voices clashed, bouncing off the sterile walls. "Cardiac stress, most likely," one declared. "Stress doesn't drop a man in seconds." Another shot back. "His blood work suggests toxins," argued a third. "Then why no rash? No fever?" "Because you're reading it wrong." The air thickened with ego, not answers. Mariah Carter moved silently in the background, replacing water pitchers and folding blankets. She wasn't meant to listen, but she heard everything. "Shouldn't we consider dietary causes?" she asked. timidly unable to hold the words in. Heads turned. Dr. Halvorsen's eyes narrowed. His voice was smooth but cutting. Miss Carter, we're discussing medical science, not kitchen gossip. Soft laughter rippled among the coats. Mariah's face heated. I just thought maybe leave medicine to professionals. Another doctor interrupted, voice dripping with superiority. You're here to clean, not to diagnose. The laughter grew louder this time. Mariah gripped the tray tighter, her knuckles white. Outside the patient room, the hospital hummed with hierarchy. Nurses in pastel uniforms rushed, but even their voices were divided. The white nurses spoke freely with doctors, offering suggestions. The black and immigrant nurses moved quietly, invisible unless summoned. Did you see how they laughed at her? Whispered Aisha, a Kenyan nurse, to Mariah in the hallway. I did. Mariah's voice was low, brittle. You spoke truth, but truth doesn't fit their mouths. Before Mariah could respond, Dr. Halvorsen's voice cut across the corridor. Nurse Aisha, chart the vitals. And quickly, Aisha straightened, her face blank, and obeyed. Back inside, the debate only worsened. We could try high-dose steroids, dangerous at this stage. He doesn't have time for your textbook caution. You're only saying that because you want the credit if it works. Richard groaned. But none of them stopped arguing long enough to hear him. Mariah, entering, with fresh linens, froze. She noticed his lips part, whispering something faint. Water, she thought he mouthed. She stepped forward, holding the glass. He needs out, Dr. Halvorsen barked, startling her. We can't have interference. She set the glass down quietly and slipped back, her heart hammering. Later, in the staff break room, whispers floated among those unseen by the white coats. They don't want him better, muttered Luis, janitor with tired eyes. Not yet. Not until they can prove who's the smartest. Mariah frowned. You think it's ego. I think it's power. If he dies, the doctors still get paid. If one saves him, they'll build statues. Mariah rubbed her temples. She thought about the peanuts Whitford avoided at every estate dinner. She thought about how he always demanded his food from the same catering service. Ego, power. But what if it's something simple? She murmured. Luis looked at her sharply. You see something, don't you? I maybe. But they won't listen. They never do. Not to us. Back in the room, the doctors continued their performance. We'll order a full-body scan. And lose another 12 hours. Better than losing him to reckless guesses. Whitford's breathing grew shallow. His chest rose like a drowning man's. Gentlemen, Dr. Halvorsen slammed the clipboard down. I am in charge. We follow my protocol. Mariah, watching from the doorway, saw the patient's lips quiver again. She wanted to scream at them to listen, to stop talking about scans and drugs, and just look at him as a man. But her voice felt chained. Every attempt was met with mockery. Every instinct crushed beneath their titles. That night, the hospital wing was quieter. Machines beeped steadily. Monitors glowed. Mariah stayed later than her shift, folding linens again just to remain close. Richard stirred. His eyelids fluttered open, landing on her. For the first time, he saw her, not just through her uniform, but as a face in the room. Help me, he rasped. Mariah swallowed hard. She leaned close. I'm trying, sir, but they won't hear me. A tear slid from the corner of his eye. His lips shaped one word, please. Mariah held his hand for a brief second before footsteps sounded in the corridor. She pulled away as the doctors returned, arguing again. They didn't notice the glass of water still sitting untouched. They didn't notice the trembling hand. They only noticed themselves. The narrator's voice seemed to echo. In the silence after they left, 20 doctors in a private wing, each carrying degrees framed in gold. Yet not one could hear the truth spoken from the margins. Not one would see beyond the walls of their white coats. And with every hour, Richard Whitford slipped closer to death. Not from lack of medicine, but from arrogance, and the racism that silenced the only voice brave enough to name the obvious. The halls of Whitford Memorial were polished to a shine, but silence lived in their corners. Silence of the overlooked, the underpaid, the unheard. Mariah Carter carried a laundry cart down one corridor, her ears sharp to every sound. She had grown used to invisibility, the way wealthy guests and arrogant staff looked through her, not at her. Yet invisibility gave her something the doctors didn't have. The chance to notice. Inside the room, doctors clustered again. Elevated enzymes. We should consider myocardial infarction. No, his EKG is inconclusive. Perhaps an infection. Absurd. His labs don't match. Their voices rose and fell like a storm, drowning out the weak groans of the man on the bed. Mariah entered quietly with linens. She paused, watching Richard's breathing. It faltered, not randomly, but at intervals, sharp, shallow gasps, always after he'd eaten. She spoke softly. He's worse after meals. Dr. Chalmers, a cardiologist with a Harvard ring, turned to her with thinly veiled disgust. Are you timing his symptoms, or are you timing the laundry, Miss Carter? Laughter again, sharp, dismissive. Mariah flushed. I only thought, leave thinking to us. The words struck harder than intended. She bowed her head, retreating. In the hallway. She leaned against the wall, trembling. A voice startled her. You're not wrong. She looked up. It was Luis, the janitor. He pushed a mop bucket slowly, his eyes tired but kind. What do you mean? I've noticed it too. Every time they feed him, he weakens. But you and I, we could tattoo it on the walls, and they'd still ignore us. Mariah's throat tightened. Why won't they listen? Because their ears are tuned only to voices that sound like theirs. Mariah shook her head, whispering, it shouldn't take a degree to save a man. Luce's lips twisted. In this building, it takes the right skin and the right name. That night, Richard stirred again. His eyes fluttered open, catching sight of Mariah as she adjusted his sheets. Water, he mouthed. She lifted the glass gently. He sipped, relief flooding his face. For a fleeting second, gratitude softened his features. You see me, he rasped. Her heart clenched. Always, sir. The door opened. Dr. Halvorsen entered, frowning. What are you doing? He was thirsty. Step aside. He took the glass from her, placing it back untouched. We control his intake. Mariah bit her lip, swallowing words she wanted to scream. Later, in the break room, Aisha sat beside her. They make us feel small on purpose, the nurse said quietly. I don't care about pride, Mariah whispered back. I care that he's dying. Aisha's eyes flicked around the empty room. They know less than they claim. And if you're right, it's not ignorance, it's arrogance. Mariah's fists clenched. What if I'm the only one who sees it? What if silence kills him? Aisha reached across, squeezing her hand. Then, silence is a crime. The next morning, Richard's condition worsened. The doctors surrounded him again, arguing treatments. Will increase dosage, prepare the ore for exploratory surgery. No time for that, he's crashing. Mariah pressed her tray to her chest, frozen in the doorway. Her voice screamed inside her skull. Tell them it's the food. Tell them it's simple. But she stayed silent, because silence was safer, because every word before had been a wound, and because the halls of Whitford Memorial had been built to echo only certain voices. The silence was not absence, it was weight. It pressed against Mariah's ribs until she could barely breathe. She had seen the pattern, meals followed by collapse. Yet every attempt to speak was swallowed whole by the walls of hierarchy. Injustice did not always roar. Sometimes it whispered. Sometimes it starved the truth by choking the voices that carried it. The hospital wing no longer smelled only of antiseptic. It reeked of perfume, expensive cigars, and power. Richard Whitford's family had arrived. They came not in mourning, but in calculation. His son, Daniel Whitford, strode in first, polished, in a navy suit, phone glued to his ear. His voice was a blade. Yes, secure the shares. No, the board won't wait forever. Yes, I'll handle my father. Behind him trailed Margaret, Richard's sister, dripping diamonds like a second skin. Her eyes scanned the machines with disdain. All this for a heartbeat, she muttered. Doctors greeted them with practiced deference. Charts were explained, acronyms thrown like shields. Family nodded, feigned concern, but their questions bled greed. How long until he's stable? Daniel asked. Depends on his response to treatment. And if he doesn't respond? A pause. Then we prepare for outcomes. Daniel smirked. Good. That may be easier. Mariah stood by the wall, folding sheets, pretending invisibility. But she heard it all. Richard groaned softly. His son didn't notice. Instead, Daniel cornered Dr. Chalmers. Look, my father's assets are tied up. I need clarity. Push the treatments harder, whatever it takes if he doesn't make it. He lowered his voice, but Mariah was close enough. Better for the company. Her stomach dropped. She stepped forward. Excuse me, Mr. Whitford. Daniel turned, eyes sharp. You again. What are you doing here? I only wanted to say, the food. He cut her off with a sneer. Food. My father's dying and you bring up menus. Stay in your lane. Dr. Chalmers chuckled. Housekeeper's playing doctor again. Margaret's diamonded hand waved dismissively. Send her back to the kitchens. The laughter stung more than their words. Later, in the cafeteria, Mariah sat across from Luis. Her voice trembled. They don't care if he lives his own son. Luis nodded grimly. Vultures, waiting for the carcass. But I know it's the meals, she whispered fiercely. After every tray, he weakens. I saw the same at the estate. He avoids peanuts like poison. Luis leaned closer. Then say it louder. They won't listen. Then they'll kill him. Mariah's hands shook. She pressed them to her face. Silence was crushing her, but breaking it meant humiliation, or worse. That evening, Daniel met with Dr. Halvorsen privately in the glass-walled office. Mariah, carrying linens, passed by and caught fragments. Experimental treatment, Daniel urged. Too risky. Halvorsen replied. You'll be compensated. A pause. How much? Mariah's blood ran cold. She slowed her steps, straining to hear. Daniel leaned in, his voice low but clear. I don't need him alive. I need this over. Faster is better. Mariah gasped softly. A chair scraped inside. Who's there? Halvorsen barked. Mariah hurried down the corridor, heart pounding. The next morning, Richard's bed was surrounded again, his breathing shallow, his skin pale as paper. Doctors debated, family demanded. Mariah gathered courage. She stepped forward. Please, she said firmly, louder than before. Check his food, the oil, the sauces. He has a peanut allergy. Daniel snapped. Enough. His voice cracked through the room like a whip. All eyes turned on her. You think you know more than 20 doctors? You think you're more qualified than his family? Who would believe a housekeeper over Harvard-trained specialists? The words echoed, sharp, humiliating. Dr. Halvorsen folded his arms. Mr. Whitford, should I have her removed? Daniel smirked. Yes, before she embarrasses herself further. 2 security guards stepped forward. Mariah's knees locked, her voice trembling. I just want him to live. But she was ushered out, doors slamming behind her. In the hallway, Aisha caught her arm. What happened? Mariah's eyes burned with tears. They shut me down. Again. His own son. He wants this. Aisha's lips tightened. Then he's not just fighting illness. He's fighting betrayal. Mariah whispered, broken, and I'm the only one who sees it. Betrayal did not creep in whispers alone. Sometimes it walked boldly in polished shoes and tailored suits. Around Richard Whitford's bed, medicine became theater. Family became predators, and truth was strangled by power. The cruelty was not in ignorance but in choice, the choice to silence the one voice that cared enough to speak. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty, its fluorescent lights buzzing faintly. Mariah sat hunched over a tray of untouched food. She stared at the menu card lying on the counter. Chicken sate with peanut sauce. Her breath caught. Peanuts. Her mind raced every time Richard collapsed at the estate. It was after a dinner party. He always barked at staff to keep peanuts away. The allergy wasn't just mild. It terrified him. She whispered aloud. It's not his heart, not his brain. It's his food. Louise, mopping near the vending machine, looked up. What? She waved the menu at him. The catered meals. They're poisoning him without realizing it. Louise frowned. You're certain? Mariah's voice shook but burned with conviction. I've served him for years. I know this. Minutes later, she burst into the private wing, clutching the menu card. Doctors stood in another heated debate. We'll increase the dosage. He won't survive that dose. Then, surgery. No. Mariah's voice cracked through the noise. Every head turned. She stepped forward, trembling but firm. It's not complicated. He's allergic to peanuts. The food you're serving him, it's killing him. Dr. Halvorsen's lips curled into disdain. Peanuts, yes. Look at the pattern. He weakens after meals. Always after meals. She held up the card. This sauce contains peanut oil. Test it, please. A snicker rose from the crowd. Dr. Chalmers scoffed. Allergies. That's kindergarten medicine. Another doctor chuckled. Next she'd tell us to check for ghosts. Mariah's face flushed, but she held her ground. Mock me if you want, but he'll die if you don't listen. Daniel entered mid-scene, his voice dripping with sarcasm. What's this? Another performance? Has the maid cracked the case? Housekeeper, she corrected softly. He leaned closer, sneering. Do you hear yourself? 20 specialists can't solve this, but you think you can. A servant, Mariah's voice trembled but carried steel. Sometimes servants see what masters overlook. The room fell silent for a beat. Then laughter erupted again, crueler this time. Daniel waved her off. Remove her, she's wasting our time. 2 orderlies stepped forward. Mariah clutched the menu card to her chest. If you ignore me, you'll kill him. But the doors closed behind her as she was pushed into the hall. She sank against the wall, tears stinging her eyes. Aisha found her moments later. They laughed. Mariah whispered, "They'd rather watch him die than admit I might be right." Aisha's jaw tightened. Because, if you're right, they're exposed. And pride matters more to them than a life. Mariah's hands shook. I can't stay quiet. I have to try again. Luis appeared, holding a tray. On it sat a small cup of sauce. His voice was low. I saved this from his dinner. Smells like peanuts to me. Mariah's breath caught. Then, we have proof. But proof doesn't matter, Aisha warned. Not unless someone in their ranks tests it. Mariah clutched the tray. Then, I'll find one. Someone who still has a conscience. That night, Richard stirred again. His lips trembled, his eyes glassy. Mariah knelt beside him, holding his hand. They don't believe me, she whispered. But I know what's hurting you. His fingers squeezed weakly, almost imperceptibly. His lips moved. Help. Mariah's tears fell onto his blanket. I will, sir. Even if they call me a fool, even if they laugh, I won't stop. The missing piece was never hidden in the complexity of machines or the arrogance of doctors. It lay in plain sight, simple as a menu card. But simplicity was invisible to those blinded by pride. And racism sharpened their blindness into cruelty, ensuring the voice of truth was always the first to be silenced. Richard Whitford's breath rattled like paper in the wind. Machines beeped in frantic rhythm. The doctors clustered around, preparing for drastic measures. Prep the OR, Dr. Halvorsen commanded. He won't survive surgery, one protested. Then increase the meds. That could stop his heart entirely. Arguments stacked like bricks, building a wall of noise. Mariah stood in the doorway, clutching the tray with the sauce Luis had saved. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared it would give her away. No more waiting, she whispered to herself. No more silence. She stepped forward. Stop. Heads turned, startled. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Not you again. Mariah raised the tray, her voice steady though her hands trembled. This is what's killing him. Peanut oil. Every meal you fed him has poisoned him. Dr. Halvorsen scoffed. Ridiculous. You're accusing a 5-star catering service. I'm accusing your arrogance, Mariah shot back. You search for exotic diseases while ignoring the obvious. Gasps filled the room. No one spoke to Halvorsen that way. Daniel's face twisted with fury. How dare you accuse us? You think my father's billion-dollar life depends on the word of a housekeeper. Mariah's voice cracked but rose louder. Yes, because I pay attention. Because I care more about him than you do. The room tensed, thick with shock. Halvorsen barked. Security. But before the guards arrived, a soft voice cut through the tension. Wait. All eyes turned. It was Nurse Evelyn, one of the youngest on staff. Her hands shook, but her chin lifted. She's right, Evelyn said quietly. I've smelled it too. The sauce, they reek of peanuts. I thought it was nothing, but Daniel snapped. Don't be ridiculous. But Evelyn's voice grew firmer. We can test it. A simple assay. It takes minutes. The doctors exchanged uneasy glances. Halvorsen's face reddened. You'd risk your career on the word of a maid. Evelyn met his glare. I'd risk it on the truth. Mariah's throat tightened. For the first time, someone believed her. Daniel slammed a fist against the counter. This is absurd. Do you know what you're suggesting? That my father's death is caused by peanuts. Peanuts. Mariah stared him down. Yes, and you knew about his allergy, didn't you? Daniel froze. His jaw clenched. His eyes darted. Not denial, but anger at being cornered. Halvorsen tried to reassert control. Enough. We have a patient dying. We don't waste time on kitchen conspiracies. But Evelyn stepped forward, taking the tray from Mariah. Then I'll test it myself. No, you won't, Halvorsen barked. I already sent a sample to the lab, Evelyn confessed, her voice trembling. I did it an hour ago. We'll have results any moment. The room fell into stunned silence. Mariah exhaled shakily. She had not been alone, after all. Minutes dragged like hours until the lab technician entered with a printout. He looked nervous, glancing around the room. The sauce, he cleared his throat, contains peanut oil, high concentration. The words struck like lightning. Silence crashed down. Mariah's voice broke through, quiet but unyielding. I told you. Richard groaned weakly on the bed, his body trembling. Daniel stepped back, pale with fury. You think this proves anything? He spat. Food contamination, that's all. Irrelevant. Mariah faced him. No, this proves everything. Your pride blinded you. And your greed. She locked eyes with him. Your greed let it happen. The doctors avoided her gaze. For the first time, their white coats looked less like authority and more like shame. Halvorson tried one last push. Even if true, the discovery changes nothing. He's still critical. But now, Evelyn interrupted. We can stop feeding him poison, and he has a chance. Mariah stepped closer to Richard, her voice trembling with emotion. Hold on, sir. Don't let them silence me again. Richard's hand twitched weakly, as if answering. Confrontation is not always loud. Sometimes it is a trembling voice, refusing to step back, a hand clutching proof against a tide of power. In that sterile room, walls built of arrogance cracked under the weight of truth. A black housekeeper, long silenced, forced the world to hear, and the sound of her defiance could not be ignored. The hospital boardroom had never felt so small. The lab report sat on the table like a bomb. Every eye flicked between the printout and Daniel Whitford, whose jaw was locked tight. Halvorson tried to control the narrative. We cannot allow claims from unqualified staff to tarnish the reputation of this hospital. Mariah, seated stiffly at the far end, met his words with steady fire. It isn't unverified. The lab confirmed it. You fed him peanuts until his body collapsed. Evelyn nodded beside her. The data doesn't lie. The board members shifted uneasily. Wealth and whiteness had always shielded Daniel, but truth had a way of slipping past even the strongest armor. Daniel pushed back from the table, his voice dripping with contempt. So this is what it comes to. A housekeeper and a nurse accusing me of trying to kill my own father. Do you hear yourselves? Mariah leaned forward, her hands flat on the table. You didn't need to kill him outright. You only needed him weakened enough that he couldn't fight you. Isn't that what you wanted? To inherit before he could stop you. A murmur spread around the room. Halvorson barked. Enough of this slander. But Evelyn raised her voice. Slander. I watched his lips swell after meals. I begged for dietary reviews. You shut me down every time. One board member, a gray-haired woman, narrowed her eyes. Dr. Halvorson, did you dismiss staff concerns without proper review? Halvorson flushed crimson. I followed protocol. Mariah shook her head. No. You followed Daniel's orders. Daniel stood, towering over her. You know nothing about this family, about business, about what it takes to carry this empire. You're just... He stopped himself. But the poison of the word hung heavy in the air. Mariah whispered, say it. Silence. Her eyes glistened. That's what you've thought all along, isn't it? That my skin makes me less, that my uniform makes me invisible. But I was the only one who saw what was killing him. The room was still. Truth didn't need volume, only clarity. One board member coughed. We can't ignore the liability. Here, if this gets out, Daniel snapped, it won't get out. Mariah rose to her feet, trembling but defiant. It already has. I spoke to the press before coming here. Shock hit the room like a thunderclap. Daniel's face drained of color. You, what? Mariah's voice steadied. Reporters are outside this hospital right now. You can silence me, but you can't silence the truth anymore. The board erupted in panicked whispers. Evelyn whispered to Mariah, you really did it. Mariah's lips curved in the faintest smile. I wasn't going to let them bury this. The board chair banged a gavel. This is unacceptable. We must prepare a public statement immediately. If negligence is proven, negligence, Mariah cut in sharply. Call it what it is, racism, arrogance, a system that would rather let a man die than admit a black housekeeper saw what 20 doctors missed. Daniel slammed both fists on the table. Enough. You think anyone will believe you over me? My name carries weight. Yours doesn't even leave the laundry room. Mariah's voice rose, filled with years of swallowed injustice. Then let's see whose truth the world believes, your money or my witness. For the first time, Daniel looked uncertain, not defeated, but shaken. Halvorson muttered under his breath, this is a disaster. Exposure is not a single flashbulb moment. It is a slow cracking of masks, a shattering of reputations. In that boardroom, Daniel's power bled into panic. Halvorsen's authority withered into excuses, and the silence that had protected them was pierced by a woman they never thought could speak. And once truth breaks free, it cannot be caged again. The steady beeping of the monitors filled the private ward. The board had scattered. Halvorsen retreated to hide behind paperwork, and Daniel prowled like a caged wolf. Mariah stood at Richard's bedside, gently holding his frail hand. "Please, sir, open your eyes, just once. They need to hear you." Evelyn adjusted the four, her voice hushed. "The poison's gone now. If his body fights, he could wake." Mariah whispered, "He's stronger than they think. Stronger than all of them." A groan stirred in the silence. Richard's eyelids fluttered. Daniel froze. "Father." Richard's lips parted, dry and weak. His voice was barely a whisper. What happened?" Mariah leaned close, tears springing to her eyes. "You've been poisoned, sir, by the food, by peanut oil." Richard's breath caught. His gaze shifted slowly, landing on Daniel. Daniel forced a smile, leaning in. "Don't listen to her, father. She's lying, trying to stir chaos. You've been under so much stress. You're hallucinating." Mariah shook her head fiercely. "No, he deserves the truth." Evelyn spoke up. "Lab tests confirmed it. The meals contained peanut oil. Repeated exposure almost killed you." Richard's eyes closed briefly, his chest heaving. When he opened them again, the spark of steel was there, faint, but undeniable. "Daniel," his voice was a rasp. "You knew." Daniel's composure shattered. "No, of course not. She's filling your head with." Richard lifted a trembling hand. "Enough." The word cut sharper than any shout. Even in weakness, Richard's authority filled the room. Mariah pressed his hand gently. "I tried to tell them. No one listened." His gaze softened on her. "But you saw." Daniel's mask slipped into rage. "So this is what it comes to. Believing the word of a maid over your own son." Richard's voice quivered, but it did not falter. "The maid saved my life. My son nearly ended it." The silence that followed was suffocating. Mariah's tears fell freely. "You don't have to say more, sir. The truth is already out." But Richard wasn't finished. "Daniel," his tone was deathly calm, "I built everything for you, and you would have let me die for it." Daniel's eyes burned. "You don't understand. You were never going to hand me control, always doubting me, always holding back. I had to make sure by killing me." Richard's whisper cut like a blade. Daniel's face twisted. "I did what I had to. Power doesn't wait for permission." Mariah flinched at the venom in his voice, but Richard only sighed, a sound of broken disappointment. "You think power makes a man, but it only unmasks him," Daniel snarled. "You're weak. She's weak. That's why you both cling to each other." Richard's lips trembled into the faintest smile. "No, Daniel. That's why she outlasts you." Security entered then, summoned by Evelyn. Two officers hesitated at the door. Richard gathered the last of his strength. His words were hoarse but resolute. "Get him out. I want him nowhere near me again." Daniel's voice cracked with fury. "You'll regret this. You'll all regret this." But the officers seized him, dragging him out as his shouts echoed down the corridor. Mariah knelt beside the bed, her tears staining Richard's hand. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." Richard's gaze softened, shimmering with gratitude. "You saved me. Not the doctors, not my son. You." Her voice broke. "I only did what was right. And that," Richard whispered, "is rarer than diamonds. The awakening of a dying man is not just the opening of eyes, but the seeing of truth long ignored." In that fragile moment, Richard Whitford named his betrayer and his savior. One had sought to inherit his empire through silence. The other, silenced. Her whole life had finally been heard. And in that hospital room, power began to shift. Not by money, not by status, but by truth, carried on trembling voices. The hospital gates were swarmed with flashing cameras. Reporters shouted questions as Daniel was escorted out in handcuffs. His designer suit rumpled, his face a mask of fury. "Mr. Whitford, did you attempt to murder your father? Is it true the poisoning was covered up? Why was the housekeeper the only one who saw it?" Daniel spat curses at the cameras, but the microphones caught every word. His empire, once untouchable, cracked in real time. Inside the hospital, Mariah sat in a quiet waiting area. clutching a paper cup of cold coffee. Evelyn sat beside her, whispering, "It's all over the news. They're calling you the whistleblower who saved a billionaire's life." Mariah shook her head. "I didn't do it for headlines. I just wanted the truth out." Evelyn smiled softly. "That's why it matters more." Richard Whitford requested her presence. When Mariah entered, she found him propped up on pillows, pale but steadier. Cameras were banned from the room, but his lawyers and board members hovered like shadows. Richard gestured weakly. "Come closer, Mariah." She stepped forward, his eyes weary, but alive, locked onto hers. "I owe you more than my life. I owe you an apology. I let this house, this family, this hospital silence you, but you spoke when no one else would." Mariah's throat tightened. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." His voice cracked, but his words were steady. "From this day forward, you will never be invisible again." A lawyer coughed. "Mr. Whitford, the press is demanding a statement." Richard's eyes never left Mariah. "Then they'll hear mine." Minutes later, a press conference was arranged. Richard, fragile but defiant, sat in a wheelchair before a wall of microphones. Mariah stood just behind him, trembling but tall. Reporters shouted. Cameras flashed. Richard raised a hand, silencing the chaos. "My survival is due not to doctors, nor to my son, but to Mariah Johnson, my housekeeper. She saw what arrogance blinded others to. She saved me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel, watching from the back, under guard, seethed with hatred. His father's words cut deeper than any sentence a court could give. Richard continued, his voice resonating. "What nearly killed me was not just peanut oil. It was pride. It was racism. It was a system that teaches us to ignore the voices of those we deem small. But Mariah's courage shamed our silence, and it will change this house forever." Mariah's eyes filled with tears. The cameras turned toward her, recording every flicker of her face. For once, she wasn't background. She was center stage. Reporters swarmed her with questions. "Mariah, how did you know what the doctors missed? Were you threatened for speaking out? Do you think racism played a role in the cover-up?" Her voice shook, but she spoke anyway. "I'm no doctor. I just paid attention. I watched, I cared, and I refused to be silent. And yes, racism was in every look, every dismissal, every laugh behind my back, but I'm still here, and I won't stop speaking." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras clicked like thunder. Outside, the headlines spread like wildfire. "Housekeeper saves billionaire from son's betrayal." Doctors ignored warnings. Nurse and maid prove truth. Arrogance meets its reckoning. Daniel's image, once polished and powerful, was plastered across screens in disgrace. Investors withdrew. Boards voted him out. Lawsuits mounted. Poetic justice didn't need a courtroom. It unfolded in the court of public opinion, where his empire crumbled brick by brick. Later that evening, Evelyn hugged Mariah tightly. "You've changed everything. For him, for yourself, for all of us who were too afraid to speak." Mariah whispered, "I only wanted him to live." Evelyn smiled through tears. "And now you've given us all permission to." Poetic justice does not arrive in silence. It comes with flashing cameras, trembling voices, and the sight of the mighty brought low by the ones they ignored. Daniel's downfall was not in prison bars or courtroom verdicts, but in the echo of his father's public words. "The maid saved me, the son betrayed me." And in that reversal, the world saw what it had refused to see before. The mansion was quieter than it had ever been. No endless footsteps of guests, no echo of Daniel's booming voice, only the hushed shuffle of nurses and the faint hum of monitors beside Richard's bed. Mariah stood by the tall windows, staring out at the gardens she had once only cleaned for others to enjoy. Now, she stood not as a servant, but as someone whose voice had changed the very air of the house. Richard's voice called softly from behind. "Mariah." She turned quickly. He was sitting upright, wrapped in a blanket, color returning to his face. His eyes held a new weight, the look of a man who had lost much, but seen more. He gestured to the chair beside him. "Sit, please." Mariah hesitated, then sat. It felt unnatural, her in the velvet chair, him thanking her. "I've been speaking with my lawyers," Richard said slowly. "Daniel's actions, they won't go unpunished. But my concern isn't vengeance, it's change." Mariah nodded, though her chest tightened. He reached for her hand, his grip frail but steady. "You deserve recognition, more than I can give, but what I can give, I will." Her eyes filled with tears. I never wanted anything, sir. Just for you to live. And because you wanted nothing, Richard said softly, you deserve everything. Days later, the newspapers carried another headline. Whitford Foundation announces new diversity and accountability initiative, led by whistleblower Housekeeper. Mariah stared at the article in disbelief. She had been named, not hidden, not erased. For the first time, the world was forced to remember her. Evelyn squeezed her shoulder. They'll follow your lead. Nurses, janitors, staff who were too afraid to speak, they'll find their courage in yours. Mariah whispered, then maybe it was worth it. One evening, Richard asked her to sit with him in the garden. The air smelled of fresh rain. He looked out over the sprawling estate. I thought legacy was built by empire, money, towers with my name on them, but lying in that hospital bed, I realized legacy is built by those who save you when no one else will. He turned to her. You are my legacy now, Mariah. Not Daniel. You, she shook her head, stunned. I'm just me, he said firmly. We're enough to change everything. Daniel's trial came quickly. The media shredded him before the court even spoke. His name, once golden, was now synonymous with betrayal. Mariah didn't attend. She didn't need to. Watching his empire collapse from afar was enough. She didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. She simply kept working, though now her work carried respect instead of dismissal. One night, after the cameras had left and the chaos had quieted, Mariah sat alone in her small room. She whispered to herself, you spoke, you weren't silenced. Tears slid down her cheeks, not from grief, not from fear, but from release. That the silence that once caged her now felt like freedom. That resolution is not loud. It is the soft settling of dust after a storm, the quiet breath of a survivor who finally knows she is seen. Richard Whitford lived, Daniel fell, and Mariah Johnson, once invisible, became the voice that could not be ignored. Racism, pride, and greed had tried to erase her, but her truth carved itself into history, proof that sometimes the smallest voice carries the heaviest weight.